Hello and welcome to episode 77 of Kaiju Curry House. I'm your regular host, Joe. We've got my regular co-host, Paul, with us tonight. Alex, that scoundrel, is still on holiday, but we have managed to rope in a special guest for you all tonight. This is Karl Huber, who is an award-winning artist and illustrator with a Kickstarter campaign, which is going to get started soon. So we've got a great show lined up for you tonight. But before we get into any more details, we have to start out with Paul's favorite pun. Paul, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So, Joe, what have Kaiju been up to?
Glad you asked, Paul. I'm glad you asked. I have been taken back 20 years by a couple of small boys who live in our household who have challenged me to Pokemon.
Oh.
Oh dear.
Pocket monsters. Kaiju, are they or not? But we're gonna allow it tonight.
Yeah,
because they have I was there when the old Deep Magic was written. They have no idea. They have no idea what they're getting themselves into.
I have the original scrolls.
Yes, I do. They're in a binder right now. But anyways, that's been a hoot. So they bought one of the with their pocket money, they bought one of the little Pokemon trading card game starter things that comes with 3 decks. We have a Pikachu deck, we have a Mewtwo deck, and of course we have a Charizard deck. And then there's me, the water, type guy, is going, where's the Blastoise? Is there no Feraligatr around here? Like, Gyarados, anybody? Like,
these are legitimate questions.
Where's the water? I mean, like, nobody was expecting Venusaur to make this party, but I mean, come on, Blastoise should have been there. So anyways, it was great. So Henry is the younger of the 2 boys, and Henry, he goes, wow, you're really good. Like, yeah, I am. So then Charlie, he's the older of the 2. Charlie challenges me, and Mewtwo is pretty good, So Joe took Mewtwo on with the Pikachu, and I hate Pikachu, but Pikachu really, he helped me out in this one. But anyways, we got to a point where the both of them were against me at the same time, and they were like, "You're really good, Joe. Can you help us make some Pokemon decks?" I'm like, "Yeah, fellas, I can help you out with this."
The wise one knows.
The wise one does know. The wise one has also dropped 20 quid to make his own water Pokemon deck. And what they don't know is that I've discovered, since I have been out of this game, like, Pokemon cards, you can get them for dirt cheap now. I was like, cards that would have costed like 20 quid, like $30 or something like that when I was their age, you can get them for like 9 cents now.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So here I am, just like, gonna drop 10 quid on this game. So they had no idea what they're in for. Their mom told me that I'm not allowed to, like,
you can't destroy them.
I mean, well, I can.
You could, but you won't.
Oh, but I can. I might very well. I'm the boss. I am the Pokemon Master. I am the gym leader. This is the elite Joe. Come on. But so I've really been enjoying the Pokemon journey, and it's been fun. So I've been roped into Pokemon Go, which I've been enjoying. I caught a Lugia today, which made me very happy. Paul, do you remember Lugia?
No.
Lugia was cool. So, like, there are 3 legendary birds, right? There's the electric one, the fire one, and the ice one. And if they get out of sorts, like, the world's weather kind of goes awry. And Lugia is like the bird dragon, like, chill one that's like, you starting something? You better not start something. I'm going to come over there. I'll turn this van right around. He's like that Pokemon.
Do you do that during the game?
Well,
you
I don't play Pokemon while I'm driving a van. I don't.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You hear that, DVLA? I don't do that. I've got enough points on the license. But anyways, so I got a Lugia today, and I was chuffed because Lugia is one of the ones that can talk. It's telepathic, so it can do that sort of stuff. But what I liked is it was like this big dragon thing that shot like a really groovy laser out of its mouth, and whatever that laser hit was just toast. So
Okay, that sounds cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool. If you look up Lugia, I mean, like, it's a really great character design. It's very eloquent, very simple, but it does the job. But yeah, Joe's gotten into Pokemon. It is September now, so Halloween season is officially starting in our house. So yeah, we were talking before the show got started. Karl brought up Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Our little boy has turned 10, and I'm wondering if I can convince his mom to let me show him Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Donald Sutherland one with
Oh yeah, of course.
Other ones don't really count, but we'll start him on that. But yeah, that's me. That's me. So I will ask our guest, Karl, what have Kaiju been up to lately?
See, it's not even at the second time wasn't any easier. What have I been up? You know what? It's more of a research thing. I sort of take these things seriously, and I've been looking at a lot of old, like medieval drawings of monsters, like the old stuff from the illuminated manuscripts and whatnot, and just finding more like just weird things that they taught, and some of that stuff is just so brilliant, and it's just such a wonderful resource of things to get. And I started going back and look at some of the more commonplace things and trying to put them into more modern context. And thus, there you have the Monsters for Children. So what we have is a series of essentially your favorites, but more friendly and fun for inviting for kids. So there's trolls, and what else was there? There's the creature. They're around here somewhere.
The world needs more trolls. Can we just talk about trolls for a second?
Trolls World Tour, yeah?
Yeah, so Harry Potter, I feel, has ruined Harry Potter and what was it, Frozen? They have ruined trolls, I feel.
Did you see Troll Hunter?
Oh my gosh! Yes,
those are some trolls.
Yeah. I own Troll Hunter.
Okay.
Troll Hunter is amazing.
There we go. That's what. Yeah, that's what that old school, farty, burpy, head scratching, armpit sniffing sort of things that lumber around in the dark in old European forests and folklore and whatnot. I'm just loving that stuff, and it's like, oh, let's make that for some kids, and let's put on some shirts and some coughs and posters and whatnot. And so yeah, this was Monsters for Children, and of course the book as well. But mostly just doing a lot of research for the second volume of this, and really finding just some great just old school things that I never knew existed. What is the headless humanoids, the dog faced people, the snake with a head on each end. I mean, just these weird medieval and they're just illuminated manuscripts, and there's stuff you find, and there's bestiaries written about them and all these magical things that they could do, and they're almost completely forgotten. And there's more that we haven't seen from this sort of source than we do know about as I'm going through all these sorts of things, and they're just wonderful. Asian vampires as opposed to Western vampires, and Chinese and Japanese vampires are different, and all these wonderful variations that you get. I've just been actually just looking into that a lot more and more and more, and just kind of, I don't know, filling in some gaps and finding some different things so that when I do, so for instance, sorry if I keep talking too long, the mummy that I did for the first volume of this, I based on South American mummies, not the Egyptian ones. So they're more like the kind that are put in a bottle or wrapped in a shawl, not the Boris Karloff kind. And I want to find more things like that when I do these volumes, so that it's the same old thing, and I'm not reinventing the wheel, but just sort of showcasing, look at they're out there all over the place. And they come in all these different forms, and they come in all these different, and they're for kids, and they're for adults, and they're for good, and they're for evil, and they're for light and dark, and they're big and they're small, and there's 18 different definitions for kobold now. I'm like, which one are you talking about? And it's just sort of really exploring the universe. And then it's getting some good drawings down. I've also been working a lot with like the more fictional villains, monsters as well. And this goes back a lot of Lovecraftian stuff I want to start working with. I don't know why I'm fascinated with the deep ones from Shadow over Innsmouth. I don't know why fish people I lose my mind over that. I don't know why. But something about this transition and not knowing that it's happening. And all of a sudden sort of waking up like you're a living, salmon, and back to the river you go, sort of whether you want to or not, and just sort of being drawn there. And sort of what the reward is, like you become the monster, but yeah, now you're immortal. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of the monsters win at the end. And I don't know why I've been really involved in that story a lot. I've been rereading it again and again and again and again, and just drawing more fish people. I don't know why.
Okay.
I guess you could say I'm hooked.
Fish people are cool. I mean, like if you were gonna inhabit any biosphere, I would choose the ocean. I mean, like you get to see so much cool stuff.
And fish are they're such great monster material. They're so ugly sometimes. Those
they're
deep
ugly,
sea things.
They're beautiful, they're colorful,
beautiful.
They're drab,
they float around. Oh, they're great.
You're not really limited by gravity. I mean, nope. It's great.
Godzilla comes from the water. But yeah, it's a lot of just old school research into some monsters for some new updates on some things for the next volume, essentially. And just going through these lovely old medieval images from Bibles or manuscripts, or and there's always like a little warning: be careful you don't run across this, or you'll the devil or something will turn you into this, that, and the other. And so there's always a little monster to warn you with. But yeah, just a lot of old research, seeing what's out there. Just the universe is getting, of monsters gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah,
that's great.
Cool.
Well, now you get to ask Paul the question.
What's Kaiju with you, Paul? Did I get that right? Nice.
Nice.
Love it. Can I use that again?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
Okay, so speaking of our missing co-host Alex, he came to visit me for a few days.
Oh no, is your house okay?
My house, yeah, he didn't burn it down or anything.
That guy's like Joey from Friends. He always wants a sandwich or something. I'm telling you what. It's like if you're giving Alex a cookie.
It's okay. We've got two boys. The cupboards are full of snacks. He's fine. He was well fed. I looked after him. Don't worry. But while he's here, obviously we had to do some, kaiju stuff. So we hid out in the man cave, and Alex is a very, very good gamer for old school games, and he was walking me through Contra 3 on the Super NES, which is a side-scrolling shooter that has some interesting creature designs. There was like a giant turtle whose head just kind of shoots out to get you, and firing and all that. But there was one particular level that we're going across, and I mean, Alex he was telling me literally, right, jump here, go to the left, fire there. I think it's burned into his brain. He has obviously played this a lot, and we were fighting a monster, and so there's some egg sacs on the floor and on the ceiling, and then out jump very, very clearly face huggers. It was, and he didn't realize really that it was a face hugger until we just looked at it and thought, hang on a minute. As a child, you would never have picked up on that, but as an adult, we're like, wow, that should be copyright. I don't know how they got away with it, but it was very cool. You're like a super soldier. You're killing aliens and mechs. It was awesome fun.
It's
I
really
remember
funny.
those from the arcade days. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Good
I
idea.
had Primal Rage. Rage.
What was the giant turtle in Neverending Story with the giant turtle in the swamp?
Mora, the ancient one.
Thank you. Yes.
Wow. Well remembered, Joe.
Oh, I read the book. The book's amazing.
Of course, yes, you did say how good the book was.
Yeah. The Neverending Story book there's a lot there for children or adults. I mean, like that book, the older you get, the deeper you realize it is. It's incredible. I have a lot of time for Neverending Story.
Yeah.
Nice. And I love that film too.
Yeah.
Just
giant puppet luck dragon.
I absolutely. It's like, you know what? I would absolutely love to see the strings. I don't care. I absolutely love that movie.
Everybody loves that movie.
Yeah,
it's impossible to hate that movie.
Exactly.
And we also watched, because he hadn't seen it yet, Godzilla vs. Kong. Yeah.
Nice.
He hadn't seen it. No. Yeah. Really? He had not seen the film before.
What was Alex's take on this?
He enjoyed it, I think he was quite distracted because he was on his phone a bit and we were chatting a bit. And so I don't think he really got any of the human story.
Well, okay.
Like,
does this really matter?
I think he's Well, you know, I like the little deaf girl in it. I loved her, and I don't feel that
she's
he
cool.
got.
She's
I don't
really
feel
cool.
that he got at all attached to her because he didn't really see a lot of it. But I mean, the monster action, he saw that and he loved that.
Oh yeah.
He was like, wow, you know, he's like, oh, that is beautifully shot. It's, oh, I love what they've done there. And so he said, I think his favorite character was Mechagodzilla. So
Okay.
I mean, that's a win there for that. But yeah, I think he enjoyed it.
Karl, what camp were you in? Were you Kong or Godzilla?
You know, I wanted to see if they were able to pull off a fight that I thought wasn't going to be one-sided, kind of, you know, sort of silly, and I loved it. I thought I didn't care who won. I just wanted sort of a good monster fight. And I keep getting on to watching the two of them tear Mechagodzilla apart. I keep again, and I just I wanted to see a good fight. In my heart, I'm a Godzilla person. You know, dinosaurs going back to, you know, when I was 7 years old, so it's always been Godzilla. And plus he breathes fire. I mean, come on.
This is the thing that everybody was like, it's just, well, Godzilla's just going to spam Kong with radioactive breath the whole time.
Right.
And lo and behold, that's what he does.
So yeah, he
and you know what? That's great. I mean, he's not supposed to be a creature of great intelligence. I mean, like, if you are a walking flamethrower,
problem solved.
Exactly. I mean, like, if a hammer sees a nail, you know.
Exactly. I thought it was just great fun. Great fun. I thought the fight scenes were great. How do I put this? There's certain things when I talk with people that feels like, you know, where does your reality meter stop and start? You know, so the little green ring on the finger flying through space is good, but dwarves mining gold in the fantasy realm is not. It's sort of, you know, there's people that, I can't read fantasy, but they like the sci-fi stuff. And so it's always just a matter of sort of defining, you know, okay, just either good or bad, but, you know, I got a buddy and he's like, oh yeah, but fantasy has no interest. You know, that's ridiculous. Like, okay, but the guy from Krypton makes perfect sense. Oh yeah.
I'm from Kansas. You're walking on thin ice there, pal. Clark is a personal friend.
He is.
Personal friend, yeah.
Because I would never, I wouldn't want to, you know, exactly.
Don't worry. I won't go all Star Wars fan on you. It's all
Thank you. Oh no.
Let's not go there.
Apologies to all Star Wars fans out there. Live long and prosper.
Thank you, my friend.
Oh, on that point, shall we take our first break and then come back?
I think we should.
Yeah, let's do that.
We should.
Excellent.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Kaiju Curry House. I'm here with Joe and guest Karl, and we're going to talk about Karl's Kickstarter project, Captain Gillman's Homespun Monster Album #2. So,
yes,
Karl, obviously we want to hear about your project, but before we do, can we hear a little bit about you? So you're an award-winning artist and teacher.
Yeah.
I believe you have a shop, don't you, as well, and an art gallery.
Right. In my home, I kind of took the idea from someone mentioning it in a conversation. I go, that sounds like a great idea. And I've got a little room downstairs with a big window in it and hung up a sign and unlocked the door. It's really more of a boutique. Like, I don't really, it's basically it's a closet with a window. That's how big it is. So it's not like a massive room, but I invite people to come in and say, look, take a look at the stuff, and then we can order online right here on the machine and whatnot. But yeah, a lot of this, and I've been a teacher for a long time, and, you know, when given opportunity would enter painting or drawing into some things, but I was pursuing teaching. And for many, many years, you know, students and other faculty and whatnot, you know, why don't you put your stuff out there? How don't you sell things? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's just they're monsters. Does anybody really want to look at this? You know, and sort of that thing. But enough of it sort of happened, and there was enough positive feedback that's sort of where this came from. As an artist, I've always been interested in dinosaurs. That's where it all began. I was drawing dinosaurs as a kid with a crayon, you know, especially stegosaurus, because you got to do this a lot, you know. And it just kind of evolved into it, more and more things. I mean, I can remember very, very specifically setting the alarm clock for 12:30 at night so I could get up and watch John Carpenter's The Thing. And what was the other movie? Crawling over, I don't know how many movie theater seats to see the, torn up version of Warriors of the Wind, which was Miyazaki's Nausicaa movie, which is my favorite movie of all time, I think, because of the creatures and all the stuff that are in it. But the awards and the illustrating mostly just come from, the teaching stuff and an occasional show that I would attend or whatnot, usually for a theme, like a history theme or sometimes a monster theme or a sci-fi stuff. But it's mostly just been involved teaching, but I found it a really rewarding experience and I love doing it. And it's been very satisfying up until 2019, which is when I started working on this sort of a little bit. Having gathered all these images together, I thought, well, there's enough here there's a lot of pictures here. And, I'm thinking, I love drawing monsters. I've been drawing them for years. Let's put them together in a book. So.
Very nice. And so your monsters, they're not so much just like your own creation, but was it from different mythologies and different cultures around the world? You found actual like folklore creatures, aren't
right.
there?
And that was a very deliberate thing because I've been drawing stuff off the top of my head, which was fine, but I wanted something recognizable, and I wanted people to sort of see. I think it came from a comment that somebody made, like, "Oh, that's already been drawn before." Oh, people are always like, "Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that you've drawn it, and let's see what you think about it." And it really was that. It would be fun to sort of make up all kinds of new things. I sort of wanted to work within a system. There's a guy who, by the name of Wayne Barlow, who's a fantasy. He did Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials and Barlow's Guide to Fantasy and Barlow's Inferno, and he's this creature illustrator. And he did something called Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials. Again, it's here in my shelf, turning to dust. Literally every page has fallen out. It's just like this withered old thing, and it was just. I knew that I wanted to do something like that. And the idea of trying to capture what other people had written and try to make that visual. In many cases, working with very limited information, which is actually great. When they're just sort of ugly or scary, or they talk about a smell and warts or whatnot. It's like, oh, that's all kinds of stuff to play with. But his making of all these monsters and following a very traditional mode and working from very, very traditional sources, like stuff from the 1920s and whatnot, just these wonderful old aliens and monsters and whatnot from mythology, and then comparing them what other people had done. You see, all the different takes on Frankenstein, and you see all the different, and yet they're still recognizable as those things, and you see the monster, but you also notice the artist behind it. And I knew I wanted to try something like that now that I sort of had all these monster pictures around. Does that make sense? Did I ramble?
Yeah.
That makes
Did I
sense.
go off on some island somewhere? Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Just going for the ride.
It was, and so yeah, it was an attempt, a very deliberate action, because you start looking and there are the old medieval trolls, but there's Japanese trolls, and there's Chinese trolls, and there's Native American trolls, and there's South American. They're all over the place, and some are big and some are small, and some are magical and some are good and some are bad and some are this and some are that. And it's wonderful to sort of filter through all those things and sort of pick and choose, sort of, especially if I'm now sort of making them into, a lot of these are based again off the monster manual stuff. So I try to sort of keep that in mind too, that there's a gaming element to it. They should be and cause damage and be evil and be adversarial in some sort of way. But really, again, filtering through all these various and sundry things, for instance, like all the different undead monsters, vampires and mummies and whatnot. It's like, oh, Jesus, it's just another skeleton wrapped in a bed sheet. I need to do something different. And so finding different ways to see how other cultures and other histories and storytellers and fairy tales have envisioned them. And even if there's not a picture, what's the story? How are they described? Is it a curse? Is it bad luck? You are the son or the daughter of some other creature or something. And it's just a wonderful, an almost endless supply of stuff to look at. and sort of then filtering out. And again, because you can pick and choose, who's to say that's not a troll? And it's like, who's to say one way or the other? The vast difference in, even when you get down to the philosophy of let's say Eastern versus Western dragons, they're very evil in one culture and they're very good in the other, so which one do you want to be? Which one do you want to use? Do you want to be Falcor? Or do you want to be Smog? And it's fun to be able to look at all those variations and see all the different permutations that exist within that.
That's cool. Yeah, because as you say, we do see that on the dragon side of things. There's lots of different, but like mummies and vampires, and I'm just used to seeing the one stereotypical one. That's so if there's other versions out there, then having them brought to life would be great. Because
and that's what was so real. It's like there's dozens of them. And that's just you again just thought with one, and then you're looking, and you start seeing the bog people, up in England and Ireland and whatnot, and some of the crazy things that were going on in Scandinavia back, in early histories and whatnot, and there's always this version of something. You see some things and it's a troll, and they show you it's a little guy with a broom. And you think, oh, he doesn't look all that threatening at all, and they're just all these wonderful. And I realize that you sort of have to stick with something that the audience will essentially grasp onto. I realize that I'm not trying to, I'm not doing an anthology of all the different versions. It's sort of a distillation down. And given the fact that it's called Monster Album and it's got the D&D influence, I think people are looking for the kinds of adversarial sort of monsters. But it's still fun to look up these various oddball things, and then find a way to segue them into this story. And there is a story behind the book. It's not just a set of stats. I figure people they got enough stats. Take whatever stat you want, whatever book you want. I'm sure there's trolls in all kinds of various role-playing games. Pick whatever stat book you want, but you can use this version of it if you want, with his teeth or his claws or his tail or whatever.
Okay, so what's the story then? Is this one long story? Is it separate stories for each creature? What
yes, it's sort of contrived. And again, I come back to Shadow over Innsmouth, which is sort of where everything is based on, and it's more of a premise. And I've set it up kind of based on, again, how the monster manual is laid out, but I've written it like I'm H.P. Lovecraft. And so there's sort of a description of the monster, but it's written kind of like an 1880s newspaper article. And then there'll be essentially a quote from one of the crew members describing where they encountered this creature.
Okay.
So with the bottom, of, let's say, there's a description of the ogre. And it says, the ogres mean to eat people, blah, 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 blah. And then there's from something, it's an excerpt, it's essentially, let's say, the first mate's report to his Capt, and it's in his daily log. And it'll be, this thing it killed 5 men and ate 2 horses before we were able to kill it. And just these little excerpts from the story. So there's no linear definition. So every page is sort of its own little story within a larger context of what you are is essentially you're a crew on a boat. Again, taken right out Shadow over Innsmouth. And setting sail just like out of the story, borrowed heavily from that. Look, and you're just out exploring in this, as I put it, I created this fictional crew and I set them adrift on a fantasy ocean, but it's all centered on here, essentially planet Earth, but in a very Lovecraftian kind of influence with it. So as they sail around these islands and encounter different people and cultures and whatnot, they run into a troll or a basilisk or orcs, or getting orcs into H.P. Lovecraft was a little odd. But it worked. So that's why there's anything too specific to nail down. So you'll have this description like it was written by a journalist, and there's then a blurb from like the captain or the first mate or whatnot. And there's an introduction that says, and it's written very much in like this 1880s language, where, once upon a time, well, not once upon a time, how does it start off? That, in such and such place, so-and-so went off and established trade routes, and then they found all this wreckage that came aboard, and these are the excerpts from the diaries and whatnot from the lost crew of the HMS whatever, and presented to you here by Mistaconic University Press. That's what I wrote it as. So it's kind of like an excerpts of pages and diary notes that have washed ashore and cobbled together into this anthology. So there's a theme running through it, but not necessarily a linear story. Characters that die on one page may give you a quote on another, and it's dated, and some dates are here and some dates are there. So again, it's stuff pulled from a wreckage, essentially piecemeal.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's fun.
Cool. Yeah.
That's like a great coffee table book, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah,
like one of those ones that you just keep out.
Yeah, you just pick it up and look at it. There's no linear structure to it. It is sort of all explained in sort of the beginning. It's like, and I say to folks, like, look, this is going to be weird. All right. It's a bunch of stuff that I pretended washed up on an island by a bunch of people who don't exist so that I can draw monsters about it and tell you why. So it really is a sort of a roundabout sort of way to put them out there. But I wrap them up into this, sort of fanciful tale and, have characters in it that react to each other. And the characters eventually begin to transform into fish people. So it's also, you get to see deep ones gradually transform as you read the various volumes, so the covers will essentially change. And there's an ongoing little intro about the Gillmans, who are the deep ones. And as you open up, the picture so the opening one is at one stage, which is explained, and then they'll show you another one. Oh, here's so-and-so Gillman and at such and such a time, and they're painted like old school portraits and whatnot. The whole idea is try to catch a really, thank you, is a really old school, like this really did just waft up on the shore, and it was written by some old goofball 100 years ago. So the writing is a little old fashioned, and I don't use these and thous, but and I didn't use the word, I never once used, what is it, gibbous. I never once used the word gibbous anywhere in my writing, in my H.P. Lovecraft inspired. He was always using that word. It's something to do with the full moon. I'm sure someone's going to come back and tell me, no, you idiot, it means this. I was like, I'm sorry. But yeah, it's sort of written this weird, clunky kind of, 19th century language, which I sort of grew to love. And it fits the time and the place that I wanted to put it in. So, and yeah, so the first volume is that
yeah.
Should I the first volume? Sorry, I'm a little nervous. The first volume was again just sort of a labor of love, and again, people kept asking me to put these together. I had 15 monster pictures and a story, and I've been writing this stuff. I'd also writing a role playing campaign, and these characters sort of like, I'm just going to put them into this, and again, I'd always love the Monster Manual. I mean, I love that book. And the first volume is still my favorite. To this day, I'm always picking it up and reading it. And I knew that I had to at least try to do something like this. I figured I'll be drawing monsters anyways. I might as well write this little story, and I'm having a ball doing it, to be honest with you. Even if, as I said in some of the updates on the Kickstarter thing, even, if it doesn't go through, I'm still drawing the monsters, just so you all know. It's just a matter of where does it go beyond that, essentially.
Yeah.
So, but it really was a big old labor of monster love. And I just wanted to draw a bunch of pictures of my old school favorites, especially the old role playing, trolls and goblins and kobolds and all the old school stuff that, you read about in, Snow White and, Sleeping Beauty, witches and all that great stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got volume 1 done.
Yes.
I'll take it. Have you chosen the monsters for volume 2, or is it you still just thinking about that? You're researching that now?
I've got about 6 or 7 of them done. Maybe 7 or 8, depending on sort of what happens. And the thing that I do with them is they're also, I don't want to say they're drawn differently, but they're finished to a different level. Some I keep very sketchy, so it looks like various people are sort of doing it. Some of them are very finished. Some of them have backgrounds. Some of them don't. It varies it a little bit. So there's variation without all having them be too different. One of the other things, now I'm getting off on a tangent. One of the other things that I was really big on in this that I wanted to make sure and do is that the drawing matched the description, which always was, and again, it's like, it says in the description that they only use swords when they fight, but he's clearly holding a mace. Yeah, I can be that guy sometimes. And so I wanted the descriptions when I was writing them to say this, so it looks exactly the same. Or you'd see the same monster appear in the book several times, but a different artist done it. So is that the same thing? And so I wanted this to be a really, really consistent thing. So the second volume, there's about like again 6 or 7 of them done in some of them very finished pen and ink, some of them are pencil sketches, some of them are just sketchbook sketches. Some of them are actually paintings, like some of the Gillman family. I have several of their portraits that I'm going to be using. So on the second volume, it'll be Mrs. Gillman on the cover, and it's going to be slightly blue. And then the second input of the Gillman family will be another portrait of another Innsmouth in a different stage. So for instance, I have a painting of essentially, and I did it specifically for this, I just wasn't sure how, of a deep one dressed as a Civil War soldier, for his Civil War portrait. So he's got his gun and his hat and there's a flag behind him. It was taken off, and I essentially took a tintype from an old Civil War photograph and I put this fish face person in it. It just sort of ground it in here and yet create this sort of fantasy element. So there's about, like I said, maybe 7 or 8 illustrations fully done. And the characters, and a lot of the stuff will be reminding you of who the characters. So there's a character sheet at the very end. Here's the list of the crewmates, and you'll see that every time to sort of remind you. The introduction will change each time. It'll be like part 1, part 2, part 3. What do I have this time? The first volume focuses really a lot on like undead monsters. I don't know why. I did a really great drawing in class of a skeleton, kind of it's like a, angel of death sort of thing. And then I drew it again, and I drew it. It's like, oh, I've got it. And so and they were all in different forms and whatnot. And so those turned into a lot of the undead that are now in the book. So I did a mummy and a ghoul and a wight and a wraith. And there's another one in there somewhere. I'm particularly, now I'm going to just plug myself here a little bit. I'm very sorry about this. I'm particularly happy with the way the ghoul looked out, because it almost was right up there with one of my all-time favorite idols, Bernie Wrightson, and his undead ghoul monsters. And I thought, oh my God, I was so proud of that particular drawing. And it's just a little tiny silly thing, but one of my art heroes, Bernie Wrightson, always was drawing zombies and things coming out of the ground and whatnot. And I was very proud of that one. So there was a lot of undead stuff going on in the first one. In this one, I'm sensing a lot of snake things. Like there's a lot of snake monsters. Getting back and reading a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, been drawing a lot of serpent people. But then I've got flying snakes, and I've got snake-headed monsters, and I've got things. So this one's going to be very serpentine, I think. And it's sort of mood, kind of whatever the mood I'm in, I guess. I don't know why the first one was filled with undead. I have no idea. They were just, another skeleton with an axe. Yes.
To merge kind of like the themes of the two, I'm just going to ask, have you read any of the original Conan books?
I've read a little Robert E. Howard, not so much, but I was getting into Fafnir and the Grey Mouser. Because
if you like skeletons,
yeah,
and you like undead, and you like snake people,
yeah,
boy,
have I got some news for you? Yeah, no, I was reading Fafnir and the Grey Mouser, and oh my God, I just brain farted. John Carter's Mars. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Some of the
my
original.
Gosh! Someone else has read John Carter of Mars.
Yeah.
Edgar Rice Burroughs is amazing. Everybody should read Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Everyone should read it.
He should be mandatory taught in American literature to all kids before they leave primary school.
Yes.
That is his target audience.
And I'm reading this stuff like, oh my God, and I'm thinking all the illustrations that go with it. And all these old school pictures, but yeah, that's where the snake people are coming from, because I've been reading these guys, and Tharks. Is there anything better than a Thark? Is there anything better in the world? A 4-armed 8-foot alien with tubes on his head? More.
And tusks. Don't forget the tusks.
I can't forget the tusks. My all-time. Just give me more of them. I don't care what it is. Just have them swinging swords and leaping around. Just absolutely brilliant.
Tharks are cool.
They're just so cool.
They are awesome.
But yeah, that's it is. You're right. It's coming out of that Robert E. Howard kind of stuff. There's not as much action, as, let's say, his things like mine's a little bit more Lovecraftian, that sort of doomed mission, but it's of that same pulpish writing.
Pulpy, like vaguely, I mean, adventure, like pulp adventure,
right.
but it has like this weird mix of like dark fantasy with like a little bit of Atlantean sci-fi thrown
Exactly. Yeah. And so one of the things that I want to sort of, that I actually sort of gave myself permission to do is, like, it's supposed to be a monster, so I was trying to stay away from characters, but I thought, no, I'm throwing in a witch and an evil wizard and a druid, and I want an Atlantean, priestess, or like a Stygian witch or something with a well and smoke and tentacles coming out of it.
I love the fact that you've read the same books that I have and you're still as excited. This is great stuff.
Oh yeah!
Stop laughing, Paul.
Finally, someone Joe at last.
No. Oh yeah, well, and getting to the final, thing about this is this rediscovery of all this great. I don't want to call it old, but this really wonderful classic writing in this genre. And you read this stuff, and you're like, it's like, oh my God, they were thinking of this stuff back in the 1910, 1920, 1890s. When some of these
great
guys
minds think alike.
They're exactly, and they're great. And this is before computers, so they've got what is it? They had cigarettes that help you remember everything, and it's like, just fantastic stuff. What was it? Memory bubblegum. Larry Niven's first novel, World of Patovs, before written. So it's something called a brain board, and he eats like this a chewing gum that makes him do something, makes him telekinetic and it's just wacky, just nuttier than squirrel droppings, and just great stuff. But yeah, the great old classic things are really starting to become a lot more appealing to me. They're just so inventive and amazing.
Yeah, when you don't have to conform to any rule, suddenly it's a lot more fun.
Right.
And you I mean, in essence, you get to have like a really fun adventure story if you don't have to adhere to any specific rules. So like Disney does this fantastically, like all of their like stories, like let's take Raya and the Last Dragon, for example. So Raya has a sword which turns into like this crazy whip repelling thing. It's like Batman's sword. I beg your pardon? Who cares? It's cool, and it's part of the story.
And you made them, and you put part of the story.
There are these purple fog monsters just coming out of nowhere, and they turn people to stone. I don't care where they came from. This is cool. How are we going to get rid of that?
Right.
I mean, like this is great. This is what's fun. And when you suddenly bog stuff down with a bunch of exposition on why this could actually happen, it's just like, I don't care.
I don't even know how you did your trick. I don't want to know how you did the magic.
I'm not reading a book to live real life. Come on, no. I can close it and live that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But no, I mean, like all the greats, like Edgar Rice Burroughs, Robert E. Howard. I mean, these guys, like they were great. Jules Verne had a lot of exposition, but I will give him due credit. He thought of a lot of cool stuff before.
Cool. And H.G. Wells that I've been going over and reading, and I love the idea of Victorian aliens. That is just awesome to me. And we didn't launch a rocket. We fired our ship at you, and they launched these things on massive catapults towards the earth, and they land in giant stainless steel containers with steam and vacuum tubes and whatnot.
War of the Worlds.
It's
oh my gosh. It's
just so much fun.
Because they had just things that we would think mundane now, back then were just so eloquent and beyond. And it's just really fun to like see this stuff. Oh, what's another really good one? You mentioned H.G. Wells. We've got Lovecraft.
The ace in the hole that I have found is reading this guy's stuff is like running through water. It's like running in the pool. So you have to brace yourself for it. But his name is William Hope Hodgson. And I think he was born in the late 1800s. He was killed in World War One. If that gives you any sense of time. But he wrote these two utterly fantastical, and I mean just books that are you've never heard of, but in their time were just absolutely fantastically, just amazingly imaginative. Oh God, what is it called? One is called The House on the Borderlands. It's essentially a house that sits at the crossroads of two parallel dimensions, and so things creep in and out of it. And it's just the craziest idea. And what's the other one called that I've been getting? It's a bit of a slog, and it's essentially takes place in the far distant future where the sun has gone out, and I can't believe I'm drawing a complete blank on it. And it's again, someone
that's very Ray Bradbury-esque, honestly.
Yeah, and oh God, it's not called that's the name of the first chapter. Is the last readout. Oh God, I'm so stupid. I'm sorry. I can't remember the name of this book. And these are these Victorian, things like this. And no, that's not the name of it. It'll come to me in a second. But they're these old school, and again, it's sci-fi written 150 years ago. So they have notions of. That's what I always love about John Carter. We didn't have rockets; it was astral projection. So how do you get to Mars?
Oh, yeah. He was a radio wave copy of.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
brilliant.
It was absolutely genius. And you know what? They use it for that great cliffhanger ending.
Right.
Oh my gosh, you remember reading that first book, and then you get to the end, you're just like, oh my God, I am so glad this was written 80 years ago and I can just pick up the next book.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so good.
So good. Well, the great thing about it is you see where all these guys get their, especially some of the modern stuff. I read before sort of, I guess, the internet, and I'm reading all these books where there's no such thing as cyber this or cyber that, and they're all very different. It's all just all over the place. And ever since this sort of happened, it's kind of gone down to here where they're kind of very much all kind of reconstituting the same thing. But God, what is the name of that bloody book? It's going to drive me absolutely bananas. But some of the, again, getting back to the really old school stuff. And that's what I wanted to go back and find some of these sources because they are so imaginative. And a lot of them do borrow from sort of maybe more traditional sources, but have, again, I don't want to say modernized them, but have so reimagined them and told stories about them in a new, different way that I really just wanted to, sort of use that, because again, the writing is one of the things about the volumes that had to happen is the writing couldn't sound too modern because it's supposed to look like you just pulled out of the sea. And so I don't want to say it's deliberately clunky, but it's, how shall we say, slightly archaic, just a little, some of the phrases are slightly obsolete deliberately so that it's looked like, whose grandmother wrote this, that kind of effect where it's a little bit dated. Yeah. So it very much feels like the thing that it is. And, Paul, getting back to your question about, is there a story or whatnot? No, it's more impressions of it. I want you to look at the pictures and get a sense of some horror, but you're not going to encounter this ogre again or anything else like that. It's, that it's mean or it's nasty, or that so-and-so vanished in a pool of dust, or such and such dropped dead at the sight of it. There's a quote about the ghost where it's just, in the novel where they talk about a guy just dropping dead, and that's all you know about it. So it's just more of the effects, less a story or narrative or driven or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Right. Time for our second break, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay.
Excellent. Gotcha. Hi, this is Karl. Welcome back to episode 77. Kaiju all doing?
Hey.
And our last segment is all about me. I want to talk to you about the Kickstarter project. I launched it about 2 weeks ago. I would have been more on top of things and got with you guys sooner, but we had, again, the incident. But it's, again, the second volume of my I also tried to give it a rather cumbersome title. I'm trying to do everything I can to make this as unpopular as I possibly can. So it's got a long, boring title. It's hard to read. It doesn't fit. It's really, really a pain in the neck.
And
But
Tolkien sold copies of Silmarillion. I mean, like, you're in good company. I mean,
oh yeah, he and to this day, after in retrospect, is probably my favorite of all his novels. It
wow,
took
you
me
are
a
one
while
of
to
the
get to it.
chosen few that
Yeah,
read
I
it then.
actually I read it. I read it like three times, and I actually ended up loving it. But it was a acquired taste, to say the least. Um, so the second one is coming out, and again, I did the first one just to sort of prove that I could, more just to myself than anything else. But I also said, follow through with it. That doesn't mean having a digital file, print a bloody copy of it, with all the setup and talking to a printer, and can you actually do this by yourself, A to Z? And yeah, I did. It was a little roundabout. The drawings came about rather, I don't want to say randomly, but in doing the drawings for classes and doing demonstrations and putting it out there and putting together the portfolio, I said, pick something out, monsters. Well, how could it be anything else? So for drawing demonstrations, for anything like that, it was, draw this, draw that, for media demonstrations, I always chose monsters. And so I ended up having a bunch of them, knowing in the back of my head, from the beginning of our conversation, it was always something that was always looming, something I knew I wanted to do. And when I found out I had enough of them, I thought, I got enough here to make at least one attempt at this. And if it blows up in my face, then, no one gets hurt. I'm rather happy with it. And again, this is, again, all about me. But I was reading a bunch, again, this old school fantasy and sci-fi stuff that we love. And I was getting a sense of the language that I wanted to use and, having enough of these things. And so I decided to do the Kickstarter project, mostly so that I can do it again, but sort of then get it done faster, in a more controlled way. The idea, having done it once, it'll be better the second time around, and it won't take nearly as long. And I've sort of solidified the story. I've solidified, how I want to do things. And so to set off with, and again, this is my first Kickstarter campaign. It took me quite a long time looking at other people's campaigns. How do they do things? What is and what isn't. I realized.
Is there anybody that you used as inspiration, just to kind of give folks a feel, like as far as Kickstarters go?
None. I knew that it could be done. I saw what some people had asked for and offered, and I sort of built on that. There were a lot of people giving out simple things like we'll email you a PDF, or a simple. It's like, okay, I don't need to mail you the sun and moon every time you sponsor. It's more of a thank you sort of effort and a gesture, and lots of updates. So it is learning as I go. Okay. But it was something that was part of the process as well. I thought, well, if I want to do this, maybe I should learn how to promote things as much as anything else. And this would sort of then get that kickstarted. And so the initials you were talking about, what are you getting as far as the rewards and whatnot go, was very much based on the idea that I wanted to be able to give people something immediately. So that if there's a reward, and again, you guys suggested it, and I'm actually going to go and change it. Volume 2 will be a reward for a higher level. It's just, and I'll tell everyone right now, there's going to be a wait on that one. This you can get right now. It's done. I put it in an envelope. I sign it. I say thank you very much, and I give you I sprinkle a little 4-leaf clover on it.
So can we talk about time frames? So right now,
absolutely,
this episode that you're listening to, folks, will drop on September the 6th, 2021. So Karl, how long is the Kickstarter going to be going for?
It goes until I think it goes to October the 3rd or the 4th. Okay. And again, I actually jump on it, and I have, use you guys. I said, I'm doing this podcast. I did apologize to people too. I said, look, I should have been on this last week, but I was screwing around with something else that ended up just me with my tires in the mud. So I would have been more on top of this. You would have known about it sooner. And I did give myself extra time to sort of, as the learning curve goes. It's a first attempt. I'm constantly updating things on the site as well, saying I've decided to do this. Hey, there's more comic books available now, since more people were interested in that tier reward. Most of them are sort of going for the book, and so I thought, well, let's make a lot more of those available. because it's a small print run.
So what kind of tiers do we have available? Like what are we offering here? There's the book, which you mentioned.
There's the book,
awesome.
which is at $25. And really that's the other ones. There's a $1 reward tier, and I whisper thank you to the ether gods. $5. I have tons and tons of black and white monsters, and I send you a nice PDF of that, of just a random monster. $10, you get a signed thank you card of one of the monsters, and you can pick. So you could say, oh, I've been looking through this. I want the orc. Do you have that on? Yes, I do. The cards don't have color; they're just black and white, but they look just fine. The book is done a little bit differently with the color to sort of make it, I don't know, again, a little bit more old school. The cards are stark black and white, so there's that old school feel, but it's not on the weathered paper. It's more just the old black and white pulp stuff. So that's a reward. Again, the comic book at $25, and for the diehard fans, there is for, oh gosh, what was it? I think it's for $700. You get a framed. You can choose any of the framed originals that you want, and there's a list of those that you can pick. And it's sort of first come, first serve. And these are original. They're framed. I matted them myself, so they're custom matted as well. They're 16 by 20. And more of them become available. That's one of the other updates that I do. So as I draw one for the book, archive it, scan it, put it all together, but then put it in a frame and say, look, now this one's available. And I've got, a dozen and a half of those at least, in various, and you can pick and choose, but it's sort of first come, first serve.
When you mentioned the comic book earlier, you said that had been a really popular choice. Why is that?
I think it's because it's tangible and it's immediately available. And you're preaching to the choir. I think it's a hell of a lot of fun. I've had a couple people read it and gotten 2 thumbs up on it. It's goofy fun. There's like adventure and tear and whatnot, but there's no violence. There's no one's head is actually being ripped off. It's ooh sort of things. And I think people respond to that because it's a tangible thing. I think it's a fair reward, really. It's good size, it's glossy, it's got, every page is filled with something. There's all kinds of explanations and all kinds of, sorry, I'm showing this in the glossy page, but there's the ghost I was talking about. The type is deliberately kind of to make it look like it wasn't quite set right. The spacing's been all whopper jawed a little bit so that it looks like it was kind of cut and pasted together, like someone took a pair of scissors and put 2 pieces of thing together to make it work. I just think because it's fun and it looks good. The cover was something I really researched a lot. I was typing, 1850s almanacs and what do they look like? And there's all this sort of scroll work. And I thought that's a little bit too fancy, but there's sort of this almost circus poster sort of effect that I was seeing. I just think it's a fun reward. It's sort of one of those things whenever you sort of teach a class or write a story or do whatever, it's like, gee, I wish I would have had this when I was a kid. And that's kind of what I wanted this to be. Gee, I wish I would have found something like this, going on. Not that I didn't in my own monster manuals, but, with like, gee, if I had done that, I would have changed it a little bit differently. Well, put your money where your mouth is, Karl. And, there you have it. But I think people just like monsters. And I think this collection is a way for them to kind of have it. And it really isn't that much. And these I have with me right now. So as soon as it goes, I can take them, shove them right in an envelope. They're not print on demand. They're not in a warehouse. These are in my house, safely stored, ready to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just think it's something that they want. I would be happy to send. I would be happy to send you guys a couple of them if you're down.
Oh, don't worry. We will totally. I will go and back the Kickstarter. I got a couple of young boys who love monsters and comics and all sorts of good stuff.
And that's what I sort of wanted to say to folks is, it's. I want you to spread the word more than anything else. I've been trying to tell people I don't want 10 supporters with $1,000. Not that I wouldn't say no to it, but I'd rather have 10,000 supporters with $1. And get the word out there so that when the second volume comes out, when the third volume comes out, I mean, I'd like to have one of these myself, thick and whatnot, with my name on it, and available. And it's kind of an offset, but you can use this as an RPG, sort of monster supplement. Again, there's no stats or whatnot in it, but you got the stats already in any other book that you want. It's just a different picture with a slightly different take on it, but they're all the same. There's nothing in that's going to be too terribly unfamiliar. So if you wanted to take one of these, I'm going to use, I'm going to use this ghost or this version of his, orc. My orcs are very different from Dungeons and Dragons orcs. I'm a very Tolkien orc guy, whereas the D&D orcs, well, they didn't sit well with me, so I decided to change them. And I went and did my research. I'm going to use his and not his. And that's kind of what I want to do. But it's the idea is tell lots of people who like monsters, and this is a real easy way to get it. You can share, write all over it, scribble on it. It's just a hoot. It was just something for people to have fun with, I think.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, there we go. Well, that about wraps up the Kickstarter segment. I think we can go ahead and start our recommendations, as we always do, folks. Karl, go ahead and plug away. And what other recommendations do you have for us?
The one big recommendation is going back, and you made me think about this, is that if you haven't read West of Eden, go read it. It's got illustrations. It's wonderfully imaginative, and yet it's so grounded and believable. It's so different from the stuff that we're sort of reading now. I don't suppose that now I'm a little bit dating myself, but if there are lots of great comic book adaptations. There's one called Innsmouth, and I forget the name of the other one that have been put out recently. They're very, very difficult to find, but they're wonderful graphic novels of sort of the whole deep one experience sort of told from there, and they're beautifully drawn. I'm sorry, I can't remember any of these people's names, but one of them is simply called Innsmouth, and I believe the other one was called Dagon. Sorry, I'm a big fish people person. And my final recommendation, at least for the time being, is go watch your favorite movie on the big screen if you get a chance. It will completely make you see it in a different way and appreciate the music, the cinematography, and really what that art form is, and what it kind of it's the real way you're supposed to sort of see it and really truly enjoy it. So. And as soon as I figure out the name of that guy's book, William Hope Hodgson, that other one, I'll bring that up too. But I can't remember.
Paul?
Well, so if we're talking about films, then I should go with now we've been talking about Gillman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, that Joe introduced me to, and I absolutely loved. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the thing is, you hear about it. It's such a well-known film, but I hadn't seen it myself, and I bet there's lots of people like me that. You think, oh, yeah, I know that. I've seen The Creature, but the film holds up amazingly well. It's fantastic.
It truly does.
It's just straightforward.
It is, isn't it? It's great. I'd love to see that on a big screen, especially if they do a 3D one. Like you said, it just, we've seen all those things, but it was always on Saturday afternoon, with a commercial or the sound, everything sort of being not moving around or whatnot. It absolutely a complete difference. But yeah, The Creatures, and you're right. It's a well-grounded, short, simple, spot-on film. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I think so. Joe, what would you recommend?
I have a couple of recommendations tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend a book called The Dragon and the George by Gordon R. Dickinson. I'm not sure if either of you will be immediately familiar with this, but there was a Rankin Bass cartoon called A Flight of Dragons.
Yes.
It is based on this book.
Okay.
And truth be told, it doesn't have everything in the book. It's kind of one of those where if you've read Jurassic Park, you know that the movie was leaving out quite a bit.
Yes.
The Dragon and the George by Gordon R. Dickinson is a hoot. It is hilarious. It is fun. It is basically like one of us being transported to like a D&D realm and going, wait a second, are you guys serious when you're talking like this?
Right.
But the added kicker is he is in the body of a dragon.
Oh,
okay.
which is really, it's just really funny. It's incredibly well done, but it's still managed to be a bit tongue-in-cheek and a bit fourth wall as well. So that's a great book. The other one that I'm going to recommend is Blue Moon Mountain by Geraldine McLaughlin. McLaughlin? I'm terrible. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name. But if you type in Blue Moon Mountain and her name, you will catch it. It's a lovely little story. I read it to my little girl, and basically what it is it's a little girl's introduction to monsters. So we have this adventurous little girl, and she finds her way to Blue Moon Mountain, where all of like the horrific monsters of the ancient world have gone, and they aren't like people have made them out to be. And they're all just, like really surprised to find this little girl who hasn't heard the stories about them, but thinks that they're beautiful. Like, oh, the salamander is this really gorgeous little creature that runs around and it's on fire. That's great. Oh, the hydra over there. How wonderful. You always have someone to talk to. Or the gorgon. Imagine that. You never have to brush your hair. And it's really lovely. Like a kraken comes up from like the bottom of this lake, and she waves at it, and the kraken's just so happy to be waved at rather than like poked or like chased away.
That's great.
But the illustrations are striking. It is absolutely gorgeous. And at the end of it, there's actually a glossary of all the monsters, and they are quite numerous, that are in this book. And it's just so wonderful. Of course, it features a unicorn. That is why my daughter loves it.
Of course.
But we've read this book probably the better part of 40 times in the last 2 months, and she's not getting tired of it anytime soon. So
absolutely love it.
If you are looking to indoctrinate small children into monsters, or to at least get them interested or researching it, I recommend Blue Moon Mountain.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, Joe, if I could follow up on that, that's brilliant. If you all haven't read Mercer Mayer's There's a Nightmare in My Closet, absolutely, you fall in love with monsters and dark things in the closet immediately. It's a kid's book. It's done in like 2 colors. It won a Caldecott, or so. I've got a copy sitting around here somewhere. It's Mercer Mayer. It is absolutely a fantastic, and there's this big, wonderful, droopy eared with he's got blunt tusks that look like 2 marshmallows coming out of him. He's got this big giant mouth. He's fantastic. The kid shoots him with a pop gun and the monster starts to cry. It's just a fantastic monster story. And I'm definitely checking out Blue Moon Mountain. Absolutely going to look that one up.
It's so gorgeous. And the pictures, I mean, it's the perfect bedtime story. It doesn't have a ton of dialogue. The illustrations are absolutely striking. I think there's a combination of watercolor, colored pencil, some pastels. Like it's just beautiful. And I was really happy with the fact that not only did they go through and like show you that like there are different takes on monsters and creatures, like the phoenix that is in the book is absolutely gorgeous. It's like a giant heron, and normally you see phoenixes looking like Fox from Harry Potter. It's kind of like this peacock eagle, but in this book it's not portrayed that way at all. But again, the glossary at the end to just take that little bit of extra effort, like if you liked this book and you were interested, have a go.
Right.
But again, not a lot of dialogue, easy to read. It doesn't feel childish. It's very sincere. It's a great kid's book. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's a great take on an old, again, it's something familiar and it's completely brand new.
Exactly.
I love
Anyways, folks, thank you very much for listening with us. And as always, keep it kaiju.